Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle, your host once again. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment if you want. Go to our website, www.legendssuperstitionmountains.com. Mark notes, extra videos, all kinds of stuff over there. Let's get into this one. Now, this was a story I'd actually read, I'd heard of. If you're familiar with John Mitchell, or you're with Probert or Penfield, and you'll see the story kind of drop in a few times. And going through the files that I have of Xanthus Carson, Oscar Branson, Thomas Penfield, and a few others, I noticed I found this story in multiple places. And then I found additional material, and I found they all had kind of different particulars. So where first I read the story and I thought, we're not going to do that one. And then I was going through and I was looking what else was in there. Because sometimes there's letters. Some of them worked on television shows or for other things. And there would be letters from people, and they would keep these letters. And I was looking to see what feedback or something. And then I found other material. I was like, oh, okay, this adds some interest. So then I went deeper in all the files. And so I wanted to tell this story. It's the story of the Lost Cowboy Mine. Now, there's a lot of mines. The Cowboy Mine is a pretty popular term for mines. This is the Lost Cowboy Mine. But it's a particular mine that was on the Arizona side of the Colorado River, north of Yuma and La Paz. Now, La Paz, around the time period we're speaking, 1862, there's a lot of people going in there for some gold. It would play out, and everything would dry up. La Paz is a county now, but the town itself doesn't exist. But at that time, everybody's coming in, they're going for gold, and one of the things is the merchants and the goods, dry goods, would start coming in, and ranchers. Because rather than transport beef, it was easier to raise beef and have beef there locally. So there was a group of people that started ranching on the Arizona side of the Colorado, and they had a corral. They're working cattle, and the cowboys would be bringing the cows into these corrals and stuff and get ready to break some out and sell some. And so they're working it. Well, one cowboy went to chase down a couple cows, and he came down and he found these black rocks, and they were kind of like odd shaped, kind of coarse black, and good throwing rocks. He said they kind of had weight to them. He wasn't sure if it was lead or what it could be. But he picked a bunch of them up, used them to throw at the cows. And they were so good, because he just grabbed a couple pockets full, put them in his coat and stuff. And when he was in the air, he'd always grab another handful. And he said the other cowboys used them too, because they were really good throwing rocks. They kind of like it. They're kind of around and just toss one over and get a cow to move. So eventually the Mojaves, the Apaches, just marauding along there, the gold's drying up, and then the ranching became very tough. There's not a lot of grazing. The Apaches and Mojaves obviously are depredating the herds. So they just basically give up on that area and they move on. So this particular cowboy ends up in Tucson. And when he's in Tucson, he's talking to some guys, and he's like, hey, there was these rocks found. We could never figure it out if it's lava or it's lead or what these things were. And he digs in his coat and he says, I got one. I still got a couple of them. And he took one out and put it on the table in front of this guy. It was a prospector. He said, what kind of rock is that, And he told him the story. And the prospector took at it and took a knife out and started chipping. And it started getting real shiny. And he said, it's gold. It's this tarnished gold. Where did you find this? Cowboy's amazed. He says, that explains the weight. He said there was stuff was everywhere, all over the ground. We used to pick them up because they were great rocks to throw, and we always used them to throw at the cattle. So a bunch of the guys said, well, no, we got to go back there. So they get a group together, they head up, they go out and start heading up the river, and they look for the area, but they never can quite find the spot. They make 2 or 3 different trips, and finally just give up, realizing they can't figure out where this corral is, somewhere near a little low shielded yellow hill. And They give up. So that's the story. And most people say it's probably more urban legend than anything else. Doesn't seem to have any names attached to it, but it survived for quite some time. Well, the second story that is very interesting along this is there's a Mexican girl. Her family's up in the area, and this is probably about 20, 30 years later, and they have some goats and sheep. And she's got a group of the goats and sheep out in the area near where their ranch is, and she's watching over them and kind of keeping track of things and stuff. And the storm blows in. It's like a monsoon out here, which is big, huge dust storm. And it goes in and starts scattering the sheep and goats, and she realizes there's no real cover, and the goats and sheep are scattering, and she's not able to really keep track of them and stuff, and then she realizes she's just got to get herself out of it. So she starts wandering, going this way and that way in it, and visibility in those things can be very, very like 20, 30 feet. So she really can't see where she's going. She keeps trying to figure there has to be some cover. She finally comes up on something she feels is a bit of a ledge, rock outcropping. And when she finds it, she gets around the back side of it, and it gives her some cover. She kind of finds a little niche in it, and she's able to lay back in there and get at least some cover from the storm. Storm passes a few hours later. She gets up, and she's like trying to figure out which directions she'd kind of went to get to this spot. And she realizes, I'm kind of turned around and lost. So she starts walking, and she thinks, well, I can't be that far from here, or the river or something. So she starts making a certain direction. And she runs across, she said she came across this area. There was a bit of a low-lying yellow hill, kind of yellowish, but on the ground there were all these black rocks in the area. And she picked a few of them up and looked at them, and she said she could see something yellow like gold in it. And she thought, I wonder if this is gold. So she grabbed a whole bunch up. She said she probably grabbed several handfuls. It was really heavy, but she thought, okay, because she's thinking she's going to find her way back here very shortly. And then she's going, wow, I'm going to bring everybody back. This is gold. We're rich. So she starts wandering, and she realizes she's getting nowhere. She should have been to one point or another point. So she starts turning herself around and like, I don't get it. So she finally decides, I'll start heading southwest. Because either way, I'm either going to hit a village, a town, or a ranch, or the river, and just take that. So for several days, she keeps wandering that direction. She thinks she's seeing smoke in the distance. So she keeps kind of hitting that way no matter what. Finally, almost half dead, she runs into some people. They get her, bring her in. She goes in. She barely has any of these rocks left. She only has a little handful, like 4 or 5 of them. And she tells them, I had a whole bunch, but I was so tired, and it seemed to be weighing me down. I just started dumping it out of my pack, or her whatever she had she was carrying. She said water was the most precious thing at the time. So they all talk to her, and they get her, and they convince her to take them out to the area. And they go out kind of to the general area where she'd had the goats and the sheep. But they wander and wander. But she says, she points out, in the storm, she wandered this direction, that direction. She had no idea which way she was going. And even afterwards, she wandered several directions. And after several trips, they never came up with anything. And some people believed it's probably the Lost Cowboy Mine. So I took these 2 stories, and I thought, we're not getting really any detail and stuff. But then what I thought was interesting, there was a 3rd story. 3rd time's a charm. So in the 3rd story is a man comes into town, and he's going back to San Bernardino, and he's getting ready to get on the train. And he talks, and he says he's going to get his partner because he found some very rich gold area. And he starts not talking too much about it. Says, I got to get back to San Bernardino. I want to make sure this stuff's checked. And I say, I'm going to bring my partner back, but it's plenty rich. You guys will see. On the train, he does show several people before he leaves and when he leaves, and talks about it. And they look at it and go, wow, it's, this tarnished rock that's black. And you can see there's gold underneath. And he says it's everywhere. It's out by this spot, little low-lying hill, and everything seems pretty similar. Well, he comes back, brings a partner. They supply up. They talk about it. They tell the people, hey, we're going to go out. We're going to head out there. We're going to pick up a bunch of this gold. We'll be back in a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, and you guys will see this is just incredible amount of gold. And they're like, we're not going to give anything away yet till after we get our load in. So they get several mules or burros, and they ride out, and off they go. In the first week or so, everybody's talking like, man, these guys are going to come back. We've seen these pieces. Man, this stuff's rich stuff. The other thing is these guys got their supplies together, said they were going to leave in the next day or two, and then people got up the next morning and found out they'd left sometime in the night. So they wanted nobody to follow them, know which way they were going or whatnot. And someone knew they'd kind of traveled north, or the guy had given the indication, but they had no idea which general direction other than that they went in. So they're the talk of the town for 2 or 3 weeks, and then people kind of forget about them. But a few people start talking, you know, those 2 guys came in and they bought a lot of supplies, and they were very sure they'd be back in a few weeks. We should send someone out to look for them, to get, because maybe they're a week or 2 delay, but somebody should go out and kind of take an eye and look out for them, because, you know, that's pretty rough country and stuff, and we're still having problems with some of the loose bands of Apaches Mojaves in the area and so forth. So, you know, they're not all in the reservations in that time period. So they send out a couple groups. They go search. Nothing. They come back after about a week. Send out another group. Nothing. So finally, the sheriff and a number of people get a tracker, an Apache tracker, and get him, and they pay him well to go out and get about a quarter day, a half day ahead of them to start looking for signs. They're going out, and the Apache does find a camp, and he believes from what signs he's able to read that this was a couple men that had a number of pack animals, and they figure that had to be them. They were heading this way. So they continue off a few more days, and then the Apache comes back, sits in camp, and tells them they're dead. I came upon them. It was 2 men, skeletal remains. I don't know all, you know, the pack animals are there, but none of their goods are. He said they had nothing on them, nothing, no supplies, nothing left out there. It's just the carcasses of the animals and the remains of the 2 men. And of course he was asked, well, what happened to them? Were they killed? Did they die? What happened? You know, the animals. And he said, you paid me to find them. I find them, I tell you, they're there, and that's it. So the posse kind of went out that way, couldn't really locate the spot he told them, but figured there was no reason for him to lie. And he basically told them there was nothing really left but the bones and so forth. So they figured enough's enough, got back, and everyone figured either the Mojaves, Apaches, some group, or some bad men had gotten a hold of them and killed them, but there was no gold, no nothing found at the site whatsoever. So they were picked clean too. So the stories are interesting because it's in each story we have the same gold. It's this tarnished black rock that's good, like small rocks, you know, you would pick up. It's nothing that would be kind of get you out of the unusual. The Mexican girl said she believed the storm had blown a lot of the dirt loose on the hard packed ground out of the area and exposed it. But in each story, it's out in this open area with this low-lying hill, possibly yellowish looking, and there's in the one story a corral nearby, and you have the black rock, but no ledge or anything where this might have come from. Makes it very interesting. There's not a Lost Mine is kind of an odd name for the whole story, but it seems very realistic that these multiple people had found something out there. Go check out your Mitchell, go check out your Penfield, look at the story. There's just not a lot of information other than that. I kind of went through a lot of older newspapers, see if I could find anything particular to kind of make me feel it was urban legend or where it was. It was a story being told around in the early turn of the century, 1910s, 1920s. So it had all the 3 stories had enough give to them that there were people talking about them who actually had heard the stories, and they said they were not eyewitnesses to anything, but they'd heard from someone else those tales and those stories. So perhaps urban legend, but perhaps they're on the Arizona side of the Colorado River. Colorado River, and you're working your way up and you find some good black throwing stones. They look a little bit like lava, but they feel kind of heavy. Maybe break a couple little bit piece off of it and check it out. And maybe you too will become a rich man. Just maybe. So there you go. There's the Chasing Legends for this week. The Lost Cowboy Mine. Pretty cool story, I thought. Thank you for Thomas Penfield, Oscar Branson for their files and their collections. I'll just continue digging in. Sometimes you find something and think, and then you start reading further and going through the file and go, this actually is kind of a neat winding story over time. And maybe one of you will get lucky out there and go find it. So that's it. That's it for this week. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Thank you for joining us. And always remember, the most important thing to remember is I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not. And this was Chasing Legends.